White silk, bright diamonds, then a roar on a Madrid street. Wedding bells give way to sirens, and a young queen keeps her tiara steady as history stumbles around her carriage. Tonight, I'm sharing 5 true encounters between beauty and danger, a tiara that the Atlantic returned after a famous sinking, another treasure the sea swallowed near Cape Spartel, a London heist that left only a velvet void, and, tucked in a 1922 album, a sapphire wave that appears on paper and then vanishes from the record. By the end, you'll know which jewel the ocean gave back, and why one of the most haunting pieces survives only in a photograph. But first, let's go to Madrid, to the moment when a bride stepped into sunlight wearing La Buena, and the street answered with an explosion. Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. On the morning of May 31st, 1906, Princess Victoria Eugenie of Battenberg, known as Ina, was preparing to become Queen of Spain. Crowning her wedding ensemble was a spectacular new diamond tiara from Anserena, the court jewelers. A gift from her groom, King Alfonso XIII, it featured the fleur-de-lis symbol of the House of Bourbon. It would soon be called La Buena, the good one, and it held special significance as the diadem that would transform a British princess into a Spanish queen. You know, there's something almost prophetic about calling it the good one, considering what was about to unfold, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. After a flawless ceremony at the royal monastery of San Geronimo, the celebration spilled out into the Madrid sunshine. Amid ringing church bells and celebratory cannon fire, the newly married couple climbed into the crown coach. A grand procession began its 5-mile journey back to the palace, winding through streets lined with cheering crowds. The procession made its stately way along the Calle Mayor, one of Madrid's main thoroughfares. They were almost home, just approaching the palace complex, when something small and seemingly innocent floated down from a third-floor balcony at number 88, a single bouquet of flowers drifting lazily in the afternoon air. Then the world exploded. A blinding flash of light erupted first, followed by a thunderous crash that shook the very ground. The bouquet had concealed a bomb, hurled by an anarchist and aimed directly at the royal coach. Metal fragments flew through the air, smoke and debris clouded the street, and the magnificent horses reared in terror as the carriages lurched violently. In that split second, celebration turned to carnage, joy to horror. Miraculously, and I use that word deliberately, the bomb missed its intended target. Some witnesses reported it deflected off an electric wire, landing instead among the horses rather than inside the royal coach. The animals pulling Alfonso and Ina's carriage were killed instantly, and the building's balconies, moments before filled with cheering onlookers, became scenes of tragedy. More than 20 innocent people lost their lives that day, with over 100 more injured. But Alfonso and Ina survived. When the smoke cleared, when the debris settled, there was the young queen still sitting in her blood-stained wedding dress, La Buena still gleaming atop her head. The tiara had witnessed horror, but it had endured. As Alfonso helped her from the damaged carriage, both of their wedding clothes now streaked with the blood of the wounded, the diamonds continued to catch the light, unchanged by the chaos around them. A British correspondent later described the scene as Ina was helped into a replacement carriage, surrounded by members of the British diplomatic party who formed a protective escort for the remainder of the journey. Her diamond wedding tiara, the article noted, was still sparkling perfectly on her head. The couple reached the palace safely, though Ina was clearly in shock, reportedly repeating, "I saw a man without any legs," as family and friends tried to comfort her. The wedding reception that followed was somber. No one felt able to eat, the celebration overshadowed by the morning's terrible events. But La Buena? The tiara survived that horrific day and went on to have a long and distinguished life in the Spanish royal collection. Today, more than a century later, it's worn on grand occasions by Queen Letizia, wife of Ina's great-grandson, King Felipe VI. The diamonds still sparkle with the same brilliance they did on that Madrid morning in 1906, carrying within their faceted surfaces the memory of a day when celebration met catastrophe and endured. There's something remarkable about that, isn't there? How a piece of jewelry can outlast the very human drama that surrounded its first appearance, becoming not just a witness to history, but a survivor of it. La Buena earned its name that day in more ways than one. It was indeed the good one, the tiara that refused to be dimmed by darkness. After the streets of Madrid, our journey takes us to Montreal, where in 1909, wealthy Canadian businessman Sir Hugh Montague Allen commissioned Cartier to create something exceptional for his wife Marguerite, now titled Lady Allen. Allen had built an empire spanning shipping, banking, and countless other ventures, and understood that his wife needed truly remarkable jewelry for the glittering social events that filled their calendar. What Cartier created was extraordinary: a diamond and seed pearl tiara featuring an elegant meander pattern, those flowing, interconnected lines that speak of classical Greek design. At its heart sat a magnificent old mine-cut diamond that could be detached and worn separately. The seed pearls created delicate waves between the diamond sections, each one perfectly matched and strung to catch the light just so. Lady Allen wore her Cartier creation to the most prestigious gatherings across Canada and Britain. The society pages of the day are filled with glowing descriptions. Lady Allen wearing black and silver striped satin, with black velvet girdle and diamante trimming, diamond tiara at a night at the opera with the Duke and Duchess of Connaught. At drawing rooms and galas, the tiara became her signature piece, transforming her from wealthy businessman's wife to genuine aristocratic presence. But you know how these stories go. Just when life seems most glittering, darkness appears on the horizon. By 1915, the Great War had been raging for months, and the Allen family was determined to contribute to the war effort. Their eldest daughter, Martha, was already in Europe working as a nurse. Their son, Hugh, was serving with the Black Watch Regiment. And now, Lady Allen decided to bring her two younger daughters, 16-year-old Anna and 15-year-old Gwendolyn, to England to establish a Red Cross base of operations. She packed nearly 20 trunks for what she expected to be a long residence abroad, nestling the Cartier tiara carefully among her most precious possessions. The ship they boarded in New York was the RMS Lusitania, one of the fastest and most luxurious ocean liners still operating despite the war. The Germans had declared British waters a war zone and had specifically threatened this very ship, but many believed its speed would keep it safe. Lady Allen, with her family's long history in shipping — the Allens had owned and operated the Allen shipping line for 2 generations — understood the risks better than most passengers. Yet on May 1st, 1915, she settled into first-class accommodations with her daughters and 2 faithful maids, Emily Davis and Annie Walker. For 6 days, the crossing proceeded smoothly. Then, on May 7th, as they sailed along the southern coast of Ireland within sight of their Liverpool destination, everything changed in an instant. The family had just finished lunch and were resting in the ship's lounge when a fellow passenger spotted something in the water: the wake of a torpedo, racing directly toward them. The German U-boat's torpedo struck the Lusitania with devastating force, followed immediately by a second internal explosion that sealed the ship's fate. In less than 20 minutes, this marvel of maritime engineering would disappear beneath the Atlantic surface forever. In the chaos that followed, as panic swept through the ship and passengers scrambled for life vests, one of Lady Allen's maids managed to retrieve the Cartier tiara from their suite before joining the family on deck. When the deck disappeared beneath their feet, all 5 women, Lady Allen, her 2 daughters, and both maids, leaped into the frigid Atlantic together. Lady Allen tried desperately to keep hold of Anna's hand, but the suction from the sinking ship was overwhelming. In those terrible moments, the family was torn apart by forces beyond their control. Lady Allen, Emily, and Annie were pulled from the water by the cargo steamer SS Westboro. Somehow, through all the chaos of sinking ship and churning sea, the Cartier tiara had survived. A small, almost meaningless miracle in the face of overwhelming tragedy. Both Allen daughters, Anna and Gwendolyn, were gone forever. Gwen's body was recovered shortly after, but Anna was never found. Lady Allen herself suffered severe injuries, a broken collarbone and crushed thigh, that took months of recovery in Irish and English hospitals. But no physical injury could compare to the anguish of losing both her younger children in a single, horrible moment. The survival of a piece of jewelry seemed almost mockingly insignificant against such profound human loss. What did diamonds and pearls matter when weighed against the lives of two young women who would never see their 20th birthdays, never marry, never have children of their own? After a long recovery, and after suffering yet another loss when her only son was killed in the war in 1917, Lady Allen returned to Canada. And remarkably, she continued to wear the tiara, as a 1920s portrait shows. It was no longer just a symbol of happy times. It was now a survivor, just like her. The tiara remained in the family for generations, passing from cousin to granddaughter. But what is the value of a jewel with such a story? Well, in 2015, on the 100th anniversary of the Lusitania tragedy, the family decided the time was right to sell. At a Sotheby's auction in Geneva, the tiara smashed all estimates, selling for over $800,000. It's a figure that speaks not just to the quality of the diamonds, but to the incredible power of its story. After a life that began in the glittering ballrooms of Montreal and endured one of history's most notorious maritime disasters, this tiara finally found a quiet moment of rest, safe under the calm light of a museum. But if the ocean gave one treasure back, it kept another forever. Just a few years before the Lusitania sank, a different shipwreck claimed the jewels of a British princess. December 1911 was meant to be a season of triumph for the British royal family. In distant India, King George V was preparing for the magnificent Delhi Durbar. But back in Britain, one branch of the family was making quieter preparations for their own winter escape. Princess Louise, the king's older sister, was planning her family's familiar winter journey to Egypt. At 44, Louise had grown increasingly private, with the press describing a very nervous state of health, and the Egyptian sunshine was meant to provide relief from the British winter and the pressures of royal life. On December 8th, Louise gathered her family, her husband Alexander, the Duke of Fife, and their two daughters, Alexandra and Maud, for what should have been a routine retreat. They boarded the SS Delhi at Tilbury, bound for Port Said. The ship's name seemed almost prophetic, given her brother was at that moment preparing for his own Delhi Durbar. But the journey felt ominous from the start. The weather was unusually harsh, with reports of strong westerly winds and torrential rains. By the time they reached the Strait of Gibraltar on the night of December 12th, the conditions had become genuinely treacherous. At 1 o'clock in the morning on December 13th, the SS Delhi ran hard aground in dense fog near Cape Spartel on the Moroccan coast. The ship listed badly as water rushed into the lower cabins. The call, "All on deck," rang out, and Princess Louise found herself on a tilting deck in her nightgown and a hastily thrown-on coat, clutching her most precious possessions. In her hands was a jewelry case, containing what we can only imagine were some of her finest pieces. When someone offered to carry it for her, Louise refused. These were her treasures, and she would not let them out of her sight. For more than 9 hours, the family huddled on board as rescue ships arrived. After several dangerous attempts failed in the vicious weather, Rear Admiral Christopher Craddock, a family friend commanding the rescue, made the difficult decision: they would have to abandon the Delhi, leaving all their luggage behind except what they could carry. Louise gripped her jewelry case even tighter. What happened next was a scene of controlled chaos. Newspapers reported that the royal party experienced very considerable difficulty getting into the rescue launch, with the ladies having to be literally dropped and caught. Louise, still in her nightclothes, kept hold of her jewelry case as she was helped into the small boat. But the sea was not finished with them yet. As the launch headed toward the Moroccan beach, enormous waves began overwhelming the vessel. The Duke of Fife and other men frantically tried to bail out water, but it was futile. Before they could reach safety, the boat was swamped and sank, sending all passengers into the churning Atlantic. In that moment of terror, as Princess Louise was thrown into the freezing water, her grip on the jewelry case was finally broken. The case disappeared into the dark water, its contents, tiaras, necklaces, whatever precious pieces she had chosen, scattering into the depths. Princess Alexandra, the elder daughter, briefly disappeared beneath the surface and had to be pulled to safety. All 4 members of the family eventually staggered onto the beach, soaked and barefoot. They had survived, but Louise's jewelry was gone forever. The lighthouse keeper at Cape Spartel gave them shelter. From there, as the Duke sat in borrowed trousers, Louise sent a wireless message to her mother, Queen Alexandra. "All safe, Louise." Just 2 words, but they carried the weight of a nightmare survived. A Times correspondent later wrote that Louise's stubborn determination to keep her jewelry safe had ultimately led to its destruction. "As they have been buried in moving sands, they are unlikely to be recovered," he observed. The sea near Cape Spartel keeps its secrets well. The moving sands have had more than a century to shift, carrying whatever treasures they hold deeper into places human hands can never reach. Sometimes I wonder what was in that case. Were there family heirlooms passed down from Queen Victoria? We'll never know. That jewelry case rests somewhere in the depths, its diamonds, if there were diamonds inside, still sparkling in the eternal darkness. Our journey now takes us from unpredictable forces of nature to something far more calculated: human audacity. In London's jewelry quarter, danger arrives quietly, wearing a uniform, carrying credentials that look authentic until they're used to steal a queen's treasures. But let's begin with the tiara itself. In 1896, when Princess Maud of Wales married Prince Karl of Denmark, her parents commissioned Carrington and Company to create something special. The result was technical marvel, a diamond and pearl tiara featuring intricate floral and scroll motifs that could transform into 3 different pieces. In its full glory, the tiara was substantial and regal. Remove the central scroll element, and it became a delicate fringe-style diadem. Dismantle it entirely, and components could become an elegant necklace or corsage ornaments. It was jewelry engineering at its finest, one piece adapting to any occasion. This versatility proved prescient when, in 1905, Princess Maud unexpectedly became Queen of Norway. The tiara traveled from London to Oslo, becoming foundational to an entirely new royal collection. It graced state occasions and family portraits until Maud's death in 1938, then passed to Crown Princess Martha, and later to Crown Princess Sonia, who became queen in 1991. Which brings us to February 1995, when Queen Sonia made what seemed a routine decision. The tiara needed professional cleaning, so it was sent to Garrard and Company on Regent Street, Crown Jewelers, to Queen Elizabeth II. At Garrard's workshops, craftsmen carefully cleaned each diamond, each pearl. The work was completed by early February, and arrangements were made for the jewelry's return. 2 security couriers were contracted to collect the pieces on Sunday, February 6th, and escort them to Norway. Here's where routine became precision crime. Someone had been watching, studying, planning. At exactly 10:25 a.m., the Norwegian couriers arrived at Garrard's headquarters, but they weren't alone. A motorcycle pulled up behind them. The rider, wearing a complete police uniform, followed them toward the entrance. His appearance was flawless. Badge, identification, everything authentic looking. When he approached Garrard's security guards explaining he needed building access, they had no reason to doubt him. But once inside, the facade dropped. A gun appeared, and suddenly this wasn't police response. It was robbery in progress. 2 accomplices materialized, and within minutes, guards were bound and gagged, keys confiscated, security protocols useless against this deception level. The thieves moved with military precision. They knew exactly what they sought, where to find it. Queen Maud's tiara vanished along with Queen Sonia's brooches and 2 garard pieces. As they fled, they systematically destroyed security tapes and smashed cameras, eliminating visual evidence. By 10:45 a.m., just 20 minutes later, the thieves were gone. Norwegian couriers left empty-handed. Queen Maud's pearl tiara had vanished into London's criminal underworld faster than it takes to drink coffee. But the story becomes surreal. A silent alarm didn't sound at Scotland Yard until 20 minutes after the thieves fled. When armed police arrived, bound guards informed them one thief might still be hiding inside. Commander Tony Rowe made a decision that brought central London to complete standstill. Armed officers surrounded the building, a 4-block radius was sealed, and one of the world's busiest shopping districts became a 6-hour siege scene. Shoppers were evacuated, traffic diverted, and heavily armed units conducted methodical searches. They found nothing. The thieves had long escaped. That evening, when the siege ended and normal life resumed on Regent Street, one fact remained. Queen Maud's pearl tiara had vanished completely. In the aftermath, Garrard, taking full responsibility for the loss of a historic piece under their care, commissioned a precise replica for the Norwegian royal family. Today, Queen Sonia wears this beautiful reproduction, maintaining the tiara's ceremonial role for a new generation. But it's not the same. The original, the one that witnessed the birth of a modern kingdom, remains lost. This heist reminds us that sometimes the greatest dangers to royal jewels come not from chaotic forces of nature, but from cold, calculated human precision. Our final story takes us not to a palace ballroom or a sinking ship, but to the most unlikely place of all, a dusty library shelf in Reston, Virginia. Sometimes the greatest treasures hide behind the plainest covers, and this tale begins with a book that looked like absolutely nothing special. In 2012, librarians at the United States Geological Survey were cataloging materials from the estate of George Frederick Kunz, a legendary gemologist who had worked for both the USGS and Tiffany & Company before his death in 1932. Among his papers was a volume with no cover, no title visible, just a plain book that seemed to contain photographs. It would have been easy to set aside, to assume it held mineral specimens or geological formations. But when they opened it, they discovered something extraordinary. A hand-colored title page in Russian that translated to The Russian Diamond Fund, dated Moscow, 1922. This was a photographic catalog of the Romanov crown jewels, compiled just after the revolution when the Bolsheviks were documenting their seized imperial treasures. The USGS team compared Kunz's 1922 album to the official 1925 publication, Russia's Treasure of Diamonds and Precious Stones, long considered the definitive record of the Russian crown jewels. 22 photographs matched between the collections, but Kunz's earlier album contained 4 additional pieces that had somehow vanished from the official 1925 catalog entirely. Among these lost treasures was what researchers immediately dubbed the Wave Tiara, a breathtaking diadem featuring 9 large oval sapphires, each surrounded by flowing diamond arcs ending in dangling pear-shaped drops. The design genuinely resembled ocean waves frozen in precious metal and gems, each sapphire cresting like a blue wave against a shore of brilliant diamonds. But who had owned this magnificent piece? Researchers began hunting for clues, and what they found was intriguing but inconclusive. In Geoffrey Munn's Tiaras, A History of Splendor, they discovered a sketch attributed to Nicolas Chevalier showing jewelry worn at the 1874 wedding of Prince Alfred, Duke of Edinburgh, to Grand Duchess Maria Alexandrovna of Russia. The sketch appeared to depict a tiara matching the wave design, worn as part of a traditional Russian kokoshnik headdress by Maria Fyodorovna, then the Tsarevna, wife of the future Alexander III. A portrait of Maria Fyodorovna from the same period, housed in the Irkutsk Art Museum and painted by Konstantin Makovsky, seemed to show the same tiara attached to an elaborate silk kokoshnik. The sapphires and diamond waves were spread across the fabric base, creating a spectacular display that combined Russian tradition with imperial splendor. If this connection is correct, then the wave tiara had a distinguished history. It would have been created for one of the most important royal weddings of the 1870s, worn by a woman who would become an empress, surviving decades of Russian imperial ceremony. What we know for certain is more limited and, in some ways, more haunting. The tiara existed in 1922, important enough to be photographed for the official Soviet inventory. It appears in the large group photograph of Russian crown jewels laid out on a table, clearly visible among the confiscated riches of the Romanov dynasty. Then, somewhere between 1922 and 1925, it vanished from the official record. The 1925 catalog was published, distributed, then quickly recalled and destroyed. Fewer than 40 copies survive worldwide, but those surviving copies contain no trace of the wave tiara. Why were these 4 items removed from the later catalog? Perhaps they had already been designated for sale. Perhaps they were deemed less historically significant. Or perhaps there were political reasons, connections to particular royal figures that Soviet authorities preferred not to document. One of the other missing pieces, a sapphire bow brooch, was tracked to a London auction in 1927, suggesting at least some of these disappeared jewels were indeed sold during the Soviet Union's systematic disposal of imperial treasures. But the wave tiara, no auction record has ever surfaced. The tiara exists now only in that single photograph from 1922, its 9 sapphires forever frozen in that moment when the old world was being catalogued before vanishing into history. Somewhere in the world, in a private vault, in a collection whose owner may not even know the piece's true identity, perhaps broken apart and sold as individual stones, the wave continues to exist. Or perhaps it doesn't. Perhaps those flowing diamond arcs were dismantled, their components scattered to different buyers, their identity as a unified masterpiece lost forever. 5 tiaras, 5 fates. La Buena survived Madrid's wedding day bombing. The Cartier tiara emerged from the Lusitania's depths. Princess Louise's jewelry vanished forever in Moroccan waters. Queen Maud's masterpiece disappeared in a London heist. And the mysterious Russian wave exists now only in a single photograph. Each of these stories reminds us that behind every sparkling tiara lies a human drama, moments of terror and triumph, loss and miraculous survival. These aren't just pieces of jewelry. They're witnesses to history, carriers of memory, silent guardians of the stories that shaped our world. If you've enjoyed this journey through the darker chapters of royal jewelry history, I'd be genuinely grateful if you'd give this video a like. It truly helps more people discover these remarkable stories. Please subscribe to join me for more explorations into the hidden histories behind the world's most magnificent treasures. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss a tale of diamonds, danger, and the extraordinary resilience of beauty in an uncertain world. Thank you for spending this time with me exploring these captivating stories of survival, loss, and mystery.